Hi readers, welcome back to Reading Realm. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I absolutely loved every single page of this book, which is surprising because this is Awake by Natasha Preston. And if you have seen any of my reviews of any of her other books before, I almost always include the ending was awful and left the worst cliffhanger, and I hated it, and it was, how could she write it like that? This one was good! And the thing is, I checked the publication date. This one was originally published in 2015, so a lot of the ones I didn't like are more recent, but this one was actually really, really good. And the other thing that's interesting to me is the other one I said the ending was still not great, but not awful in the same way, is The Cellar. And actually at the end of this, there's like the first few pages of The Cellar as a preview. So I think possibly this is the one that came out right before that, but I didn't check the publication date of that one to confirm. But this one is actually so good. And I also will say, I feel like compared to her other ones, this one is the most different. Like, if someone gave me this book and had crossed out the author's name and the cover, because I know her style of covers with always having a flower, this one is in barbed wire. But like, if someone had taken away the cover and sort of redacted every time it showed the author's name and given me this book, I don't know that I would have guessed that it's Natasha Preston because it is so different than her other books, which honestly I really enjoyed. And the other thing that I think is so interesting is there have been several times in some of her other books where it's told from more than one perspective, and this is one where it's told from two perspectives. But I feel like this one is different in that the two perspectives, one, like, this is really hard to explain without giving anything away, but they're, like, overlapping a lot more directly. Like, there have been books she's written where you see, like, the protagonist's perspective and the killer's perspective, or the protagonist's perspective and their captor's perspective, or things like this, but they're kind of doing completely separate things when you see those. Like, you'll see the people stuck in the cellar doing something, and then you'll see their captor, like, out in the real world doing something totally unrelated. But there's a lot more overlap with the two perspectives in this one. And also, I feel like you see a lot of growth from both characters, whereas some of the other books, it's like the protagonist has growth, but the villain is like set in their ways, basically. And also, I would say, being vague, the perspective that is not the protagonist in this, I would also say is not the main villain. And I'm gonna just leave it at that. But this is such a good book, and I read probably this much of it yesterday because I could not put it down. And I also think it's just very interesting because from, like, the first page, I was like, oh no, this person is gonna be a problem, like, that they're gonna be the bad character, like, I can already tell, and it's actually a lot more complicated than that. And I will also say this one is, like, a lot more fanatical than her other books, because it has a whole plot line about a cult, which is, like, the way the cult and the people in it are written is so good. Like, as a person who's never been in a cult or had too much direct experience with it, just from what I know, it seems so well written, like the brainwashing that these characters have experienced. Um, but I do think that that's kind of one of the things that makes it feel like so different than every other Natasha Preston book that I've read, because a lot of her others, the villains or antagonists have some sort of justification for what they're doing, but it's just them. It isn't like, maybe it's them and a couple other people, but for the most part, it's like one person deciding to imprison or kill or kidnap or whatever the people. But this one, it's like a whole group, and it's also very interesting because some of what they did happened like a decade ago, and then some of what they did is like currently happening, and so the time scale is interesting. I will say there are a few times where I'm very, very confused about the time of certain things in this book, because in the first few pages you learn that the character is about to turn 16, but then it also says, like, how old are you? You look older than 15 or 16. 16, he replied, what about you? Same. She's just 16. Meaning, like, she explains it was her birthday last month, that she just turned 16. But then later in the book, it's like she's about to turn 16, and then also she had something happen when she was 4, but that was a decade ago, but that would make her 14. So there's just a few things like that where it's like, wait a second, is she 16 or is she turning 16 in a month? Because it sounds like she turned 16 last month, but then she's about to turn 16. That was a little weird. There was also one that for like a couple pages, I was really confused because it was like, and this is surrounding like a huge spoiler, so I'm gonna be very vague here, but there was something where it was like she'd been awake for 24 hours, and the way that sentence was written, it sounded like 24 hours from the time that the very prior paragraph was talking about, but then the timing of something else that wouldn't have made sense for that to be possible. So then I was like, oh, wait, they mean 24 hours from the last time she slept, because she technically did not sleep before that for a long time. So that was like, I figured it out, but the way it was worded in the moment was kind of like, wait a second. But I loved it, and the ending was also so good. Like, it doesn't end with something that's like the way the others are, where it's like the worst cliffhanger with no sequel. It ends in a way that feels resolved, that feels correct for the story. It feels natural, and I really, really loved it. And another thing is, like, I keep having to remember that all these books are set in, like, the UK or Ireland, because I know a lot of her books are, and I keep forgetting that, because there are certain times where something will happen, and as a person who does not live there, I'll be like, oh, wait, oh, yeah, that actually is really close together. So that, because, like, there's a part where it's like, oh, we'll, like, go away to Ireland for a weekend, and I was like, But then it's like, no, those are actually, like, close enough for a day trip or, like, a several day trip. So that would make sense. But overall, this is the best Natasha Preston book I've ever read, without any caveats. There were some, like the twin, I was like, this ends okay if I can, like, write myself another few pages that would make everything better, but the way it is written, I'm upset with. This one is just good. And it was so compelling. Like I said, I read more than half of it yesterday. I was, at an event in my hometown, just, like, sitting out in the grass for a few hours, just reading it, and it was so good, and I could not stop reading it, and then it was, like, getting dark, so I was like, I should probably go back to my car and go home, but I had, like, this much left, and so as soon as I got home, I said hi to Cosmos, and then just immediately started reading it again and finish it, and it was so good. And I have one more Natasha Preston book that I have, and I'm going to be reading that soon, and I hope it has a good ending, because it's her, I think her most recent, or maybe she has one more that's more recent than it now, but it was The Party, and this is from 2015, and I know that she's published a lot with endings I hated since then, so I don't know what to expect, but this one was so good, and I highly recommend this to everyone. I know in the past I've said with Natasha Preston, if you don't like endings like that, maybe don't read that particular book. This one is good. You should read it. Everyone who likes this genre should read it. It is actually legitimately really good, and I also feel like there are certain times in books like this where a character will do something and I'm like, that's so stupid, like, obviously don't do that. And of course, being the reader, you have more insight that maybe they don't have. But this one feels like the characters are all actually very smart, and I think because of the whole, like, cult thing, the behavior that does happen that seems irrational from a few characters, I kind of understand it too, because it's like they're so affected by the way that they grew up and what they were taught and told, that it's so interesting. And it's the one thing I will say, this does end open-ended, but not in the same way of cliffhangers that are like, how dare they, like, obviously this person is now, like, dying, and then that's the end. This one ends more like there's a chance for something, which I'm gonna be vague about because, again, spoilers, but it's like there's a chance that something actually positive is going to happen, or is happening, or has happened, or something bad didn't happen, I guess is maybe the best way to describe it. But it is actually so good, and I can't believe it, because I feel like every time I sit down to record a Natasha Preston review, it's always like, how dare she write this way again? This one, it's just good. I loved this book. I would reread this book, and I loved the characters, most of them. The characters I didn't like, I justifiably didn't like. But the characters that I did like, I really liked. And even the character that I feel like there's a part you're not supposed to like, I kind of always was like, I don't think that character is all bad, even though that one thing was really bad. But also, again, it's justified because of the whole brainwashing cult thing. So, like, even though that behavior is not okay, the reason behind it, and knowing that that's not necessarily them doing it, but it's like the pressure of everything and their beliefs doing it. But it's so good, and I love it, and oh my gosh, it is actually just good. So, with that being said, I think anyone who likes thriller mystery should read it. Um, Again, I have one more by her, so I'm gonna see how that one goes. In the next few weeks, probably I'll start that one. Um, but thank you all so much for watching. I am trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe. If you would like, leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought if you've read this book or what you're currently reading. And keep reading. Bye!